Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Good music. I love Randy Swaim. He loves dancing with me. If you guys are hopefully on the Zoomcast, maybe just be on the podcast. But yeah, that's why we're laughing. He's always here as a friend, as a coach, and he's helping us, coaching for relevance. Welcome back today, and I appreciate the dance moves.
Well, appreciate it. I enjoy it. Honored to be here, and I've been honored to kind of connect with you on radio shows for about the last 2 years, I think. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for being here. Remind us a little bit about what you do. Or, okay. I mean, there's so much. You can spend a whole show on that, so we can summarize it. Go ahead.
I'll do it real quick. But yeah, most of my background is in aviation, and most of it's been related to military aviation, from fighter squadrons and flying, and also flying business jets on a strategic air defense training contract. But one of the things that I've learned about my journey over the last 40 years or whatever is that it really developed coaching facilitative style of leadership in me. And in fact, it was sort of interesting. I was looking at the movie Officer and a Gentleman with Richard Gere in it and all. I've got that, and I was watching the one where they just played the song with some of the scenes in the movie and all. And I was sitting there going, wow, because in my autobiography, while it's not exactly the same, there's a lot of alignment as to what that character went through and what I've gone through. And so it's been interesting to become an executive coach, and that leadership aspect that was developed in me is what really turned on my passion for executive coaching. And my whole purpose is that, 20 years, and I think you may have heard me say this before, but 20 years after I'm gone, after I take my last breath, it doesn't matter to me too much if people don't remember my name. But what I hope is there's a group of people out there that are passing it on to other people, that they remember, 20 years ago, there was this guy and this insight came up, and you know what? I applied it and it revolutionized my life. And so that's the sort of the impact, if you will, that I hope to have. So that's me.
Thank you so much. Love it. Thank you for being here. All right. And what did you have for our listeners today? Cool. What did you want to share?
Well, what I would do is take a few minutes, and I'll let you interject any questions or any thoughts or just any insights based on what we're talking about. But one of the things that I think most of the listeners will realize that, guess what? The environment that we are in today is a little different than it has been decades ago. Go figure, right? Kind of thing. Yeah. And but one of the things that I wanted to mention today, when you're talking about leadership and leading your teams and developing your people so that you achieve radical results and what I would call sometimes almost miraculous results, which you would have never expected, kind of thing. But the environment, there's some things that leaders need to be aware of in today's world that 40 years ago, maybe they didn't need to be. And one of the things that it involves in, and it's sort of interesting, because I was talking with a neuroscience colleague of mine, and I brought this up, and we were talking about it both with our heads nodding and all that. But you're talking about one of the things, and I think a lot of the people out there, when we see this, in fact, we even see this sometimes in the news things of today, where when you have a lot of people, the older generations retiring, the younger generations are not there in great numbers that can replace them. And that's kind of a big struggle in today's world. And I know one area where this exists is in aviation, when you're talking about pilots and things of that nature, where you have a lot of the pilots that have been here and are turning, 70 or whatever, are retiring. And it's not as easy to find the replacements for them. And one of the things that you see, have in today's world, and I know there's been some research out there that has sort of touched on this. In fact, you probably the name, I'm sure, Dr. Phil, obviously, Phil McGraw.
Yes, love him.
And oh, I do too. And he was actually sharing a little bit of this on one of his shows, and it is exactly right. And it has to do with the youth and the younger generations in today's world, because in today's world, in my world, when I was in the 6th grade, I kind of had a picture of what I wanted in my life, because I had military models all over my bedroom, kind of thing. the TV movies that I would watch is 12 O'Clock High and Bridges of Tokyo and all that kind of stuff, because that was my vision. But a lot of the younger generations now, when you see them coming up, all you see them doing, and I say this with a little bit of a joke, but just playing games on their phone or on their laptop, just playing those games. And Dr. Phil was kind of sharing some of the challenging points with that, where a lot of the youth are coming up into high school and ready to leave high school, and they don't have a clear vision of what they want. And if you think about it, when you think of yourself as a parent watching your youth come up, what do you need to do to think about, getting these people developed so that when they get there, they at least have a little bit of a picture of what they're hoping to achieve. And but even with all of that, even if the parents did that, when you're talking about leading a team and you have maybe some of those younger 20-year-old people coming in to your team, how are you going to handle it when they struggle with that, and they may have a little bit of a clearer picture, but maybe not a real precise picture on what their goal is for their life? But when they're coming in and they don't have those visions developed, they don't have those skills developed because they didn't know where they wanted to go. So why even worry about how to get there, that kind of thing. And you can get in a situation where you have some of that kind of stuff going on, and that's to different levels. Obviously, you may have some that don't have a clue what they want to do, but you may have some others that kind of have a sense of what they want to do, but they haven't really thought through how to get there. And when you talk about leading your team in a rapidly changing environment that's sometimes unpredictable and not clearly defined, you got, how are you going to lead them? Because, and you've heard me say this on a show before, I think most of the listeners have as well, that every person on your team is a little different. And true leadership connects with those people with where they are and all that, and interacts with them in a way that is positive results for them. And that doesn't mean you just give it to them so they don't have to do nothing, but I mean, helping them to get there is a big factor on it. And that's one thing that leaders have to be aware of, particularly depending on your industry and all of that kind of stuff in today's world. How are you going to kind of lead your team in such a way that for those unique little unexpected areas of their brain mindset, they don't have clarity perhaps on this one aspect of how that all fits in, or where they're wanting to go, or where they're how they're wanting to achieve, and how are you going to lead them to a point where they in some cases start to get clarity for it, and you can help them start to create the steps that are beneficial for your team and have clarity on it, and work together with other members in the team and really accomplish some amazing things. So it's interesting that when you look at some of those aspects in today's world, there's some aspects that were not there 30 years ago. And yet there are aspects that can affect your team. And as a leader, how are you going to interact with that? And how are you going to improve that? How are you going to, sometimes if the parents didn't get their thinking going and they were just kind of playing with the laptop for all of their high school years or whatever, how can you be their coach and mentor and get them where they're going? And so, a lot of times that is going to be, they're going to find out that, what, I got into just the right company here. Wow. Because this is very aligned with, yeah, kind of thing. And there might be some times where they don't, but you know what, if the person does not want to be doing what your team is doing, maybe they should go elsewhere. And so it's just some different aspects of it, but it's a challenging, unpredictable factor that is sometimes current in today's world. And if all you do is try to be George Patton and point fingers and threaten and, you need to be doing this is your job, all that, and that's your only approach, you can shut them down and shut their brains off so that they're not really interacting. And But you know what? If you get a sense where they start to really get a sense that, you know what, where we're going is really aligned with kind of what I was thinking of, but I didn't realize that. And all of a sudden they can get fired up, and all of a sudden, boom, they're motivating your team in some respects, maybe. And so there's a lot of aspects like that that sometimes people don't think about when you're talking about leading teams, particularly in one of the current challenges of a lot of businesses and a lot of industries out there, because that's a factor that wasn't necessarily there 40 years ago, but it certainly can be now. And so it's something that true leaders need to understand and be aware of and observe what they're seeing in their team members, and how you're going to really connect in with that in a way where, if that part of their background is sort of causing one team member to be held back a little bit, how are you going to connect in with that to help that get fired up in a certain way, so they initiate on their own that, yeah, you know what, oh yeah, and they go forward. And so it's a real good picture of this aspect of leadership. When you talk about leading teams, it's nothing that's just a strict rote academic picture. It's there's a lot of factors that are out there in people that are coming on your team sometimes that you would have never expected 30 years ago. How are you going to do that? How are you going to lead in that environment? How are you going to lead that team so they can reach radical results? And it's just a picture of leadership that sometimes people don't think, but it's very, realistic for today's world, kind of thing. And like I say, particularly depending on the industry you're in, like I say, there's a lot of people that, came up through high school and all that, didn't even picture. There was one high school with the Trinity Trojan Talk, the youth high school that I kind of am a mentor with over at in the area here. And there was one young boy that was graduating that year, and he came up after one time when I was talking to him, and he came up to me and asked me, he said, "Hey, I think I might want to kind of become a pilot." He said, "Can you help me get a sense of how to get there?" And I gave him my number, and I said, "Absolutely, let's talk," kind of thing. But so many people, they might have a sense of what they want, but they don't have a real understanding of the strategy to achieve that and accomplish it and get there. But there's some people in today's world that when they graduate from high school, they don't have a clue about what they want. So it's just something to think about in today's world. It's and in today's world, when you look at different generations, and a lot of generations, people that are retiring, and you look at, are there enough people coming into that particular industry that can replace them and keep the success going? And that's just those kind of aspects are an aspect that's just true in today's world a little bit, not 100%, but to an extent that leaders need to be aware of it.
Well, also remind us how we can reach you.
Oh, okay. Okay. You can check out my website if you want, Coaching for Relevance, and it's on there. It has my cell phone and my email, and it as I tell people, and Jill, you've heard me say this a couple hundred times already, but I don't do sales pitches. I mean, if somebody calls me up and they have a need, yeah, we'll come up with something, but I just build relationships and that kind of thing. So if somebody calls me, they don't have to worry about me really trying to throw a sales pitch at them. I'll just generate, I'll listen, I'll connect with them, and that kind of thing. So it's a pleasure on that.
Now, can everyone be a leader? Can you train anyone to be a leader?
You know what? I think you can. Now, are there some people that need to be changed a little bit more than one would think? Yes. But I will say this, that the way that you get people, particularly the challenging people that maybe didn't have a good background or whatever, the people that want to be a good leader, and I'll just share this with you, that when you do that, and if you want to do that with maybe one of your youth or one of the people on your team, or people that are up and coming leaders in your organization or whatever kind of thing, the way you do that, in fact, I'll share one thing with you here real quick, but it was kind of interesting. The way you do that is by getting clarity on the right questions to ask. And so often in today's world, when people ask a question, what they're doing is they're tailoring the question to try to pull you into their assumption, kind of thing. I was teaching a couple of, three very experienced pilots on Monday, 2 days ago. And what was interesting is one of them was retired military and had been flying for the Federal Aviation. Actually, two of them were retired military and had been flying for the Federal Aviation Administration. And the other guy had had 35 years of experience with American Airlines and was now flying. So they all three had tremendous experience. But because I brought a coaching facilitative style to the training, it was interesting that the older one, the oldest of the three, came up to me on a break. He said, "Randy, I got to share something with you." I said, "What's that?" And he looked at me and he said, "I so appreciate the way you taught today and the way that you are teaching today." He said, "Because so often people are just telling you what to do and they're just keeping it at the rote numbers and all this kind of stuff." He said, "You teach it in a way that really gets us processing and understanding and applying." And I said, "Well, that's the leadership facilitative style that I bring." And I said, "Thank you for your comment, but I am a little bit different on that." And he was very appreciative of that because it really got them processing and thinking operationally, not just academically. And when you're talking about bringing some people, like you mentioned, Jill, that might want to become better leaders, or perhaps you have people on your team that have the skills that, in a couple of years, they can be incredible leaders for your organization, but they just need to be developed a little bit to understand kind of what that's really like. The way they get there is when you are really connecting with them in a way that you ask them incredible questions, and your coaching facilitative leadership style really builds that within them, and it all comes out from the inside and everything. And it's because leaders are not just self-interested. Leaders are interested in what the people that you're talking to are really wanting to do, and really, breaking their potential free to really grow and become. And so, yeah, the answer to your question is yes, you can. But you know what? Are there some people that it would take a little bit more work? Yep. Are there some people that you really, really have to be able to ask the right questions? Yep, absolutely, and stuff. And so, do you have awareness of that? Does somebody have? Do you have clarity on what the real question should be? And do you ask it in a way that has people really process and envision and apply their thinking? And in fact, one of the things that I've told, I think, Jill, I think you may have heard me say this one time before, but one thing I've done a number of times while I'm teaching pilots in a ground school and stuff, and particularly on recurrent sessions, what I'll do is I'll sit there and I'll ask a question. Then I do this. I just go, and I just wait for them to say something, because sometimes people, and when you're leading a member of your team, there are times when you have to let them process it, and not just something you're telling them, but to really think through and process the question that you asked them so that they can come up with the great answer. And, it may take 5 minutes, it may take overnight, kind of thing. And there's been clients where I look at them when they were gained an insight, and I'll sit there and say, "Well, I'll tell you what, that's your homework for this week. When we meet next week, tell me what you come up with." And there are times as a leader when you got to do that. But if you do that and they really start building in their mental processing and their vision and their operational sense and understanding, and start applying it to the actual situations that are there, guess what? They can do amazing things. But that's when you're talking about doing that in today's environment with a lot of these different aspects, where differences in the generations and all of that, guess what? That can be a little bit of a challenge. And there's no two ways about that.
Is there anything that your clients cannot overcome?
You know what? I, probably 20 years ago, I might not have said this, but I'll tell you what, I truly, truly believe this now in here and in here. And I think is there anything that a client cannot overcome? I would say no. Are there things they may not want to overcome? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there things that they are scared of? Yeah. And so what are you going to do as a leader or a coach if you see somebody, and this comes
Mm-hmm.
from the military background, and also because guess what? Sometimes you got to connect with somebody while they're in the middle of a fight.
So true.
And if they're nervous, if you see somebody who's nervous or scared, how are you going to connect with them for a second in a way that in 10 seconds they have a sense of your belief in them? And so can people overcome anything that's holding them back? Absolutely. You know what? But and you know what? They may not win the goal that you're looking for, but what if they took it 30% beyond what you would have expected? Wow, maybe so. You know, I'll tell you what, let's try this again next year. That's cool, kind of thing. And so there's a lot of aspects on that, but can a person overcome anything that is holding them back? Yeah. Do some of them need to have a lot of courage and a lot of belief to do it? Sometimes. Do they have to have a sense that their leader believes in them? Yeah. And sometimes you got to kind of make that. Doesn't mean just telling them what to do, but it means making them believe it so that it says, you know what, doggone. And sometimes when you get them believing that they can get there, all of a sudden they'll think through it enough that they come up with a different strategy for getting there that you wouldn't have thought of. And it's easier. And they get there quicker than anybody would have thought. You know what? Maybe so. So yeah, there's a lot about that, particularly when you're talking about this challenging situation, and particularly if you have the newer generations coming in that just their entire success factor was just sitting in there and playing with a game or something. And you know what? Not everybody's like that. I'm not saying it is, but it just across the board, these are aspects that leaders need to be thinking about. And yeah, can people overcome it? Can people gain the vision? Can people accomplish more than they thought or more than anybody in their family thought? Absolutely, they can. And that's part of our job as leaders to help them get to the point where they can do that. And that doesn't mean telling them what to do, but it means asking those great questions that help them kind of go, wow, you know, let's do this. Let's do this. And so that's a key aspect of it when you're talking about a challenging, unpredictable environment.
Well, thank you for speaking of unpredictable environments. That's what you're working with, all these people, especially up in
Yeah,
that in the air.
that's true.
And we got 2 minutes left before we have to go. What else did you want to share?
I'll just share this just really quick that and it's if we run out of time, as you know, Jill, it's an honor to be on with you. But the aspect of it is just realize that you're much more capable. And when you're talking about particularly in the air, you know what? Regardless of what your team or what you want to do in your life, guess what? Murphy is who he is, and he can come on stage. Murphy's law, the thing that you didn't think was going to happen is going to come on, and it's going to happen at the worst possible time. And can you be ready for that? And because things can happen, and in a way that you didn't expect in life, but people can do that. And as a leader of the different people that are on your team, are you able to really connect with them in such a way that
Yeah.
their confidence is gained, their vision is gained, their passion and desire and their synergy is gained? Not because you're telling them what to do or how to do it, but just within themselves, they're creating it. And that's huge in the challenging times. That's what you got to be ready for. That's what you got to be able to do with your team.
Got it. Well, thank you for being here. Teamwork makes the dream work. Coachingforrelevance.com. How else can we reach you?
That's you can go to my website. It's coachingforrelevance.com, like you said, and on there it has my email and it has my cell phone number. And like I said, if you'd like to call and just have a chat, we can do that. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all that. And but be honored to just have a conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next one we have, Randy.
Well,
Thanks
I'll tell you
again.
what, Jill, you have a great one. We'll talk to you again.
You too. Have a fantastic week. I hope you're enjoying the summer.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.